Hey, and welcome to the Founder's Journey Insights. I'm Greg Moran. Just as a reminder, this is produced specifically for our subscribers to the newsletter. So really appreciate all of our new subscribers, climbing by a few hundred a week right now. So really exciting. Today, we're actually talking about the last step in the deep startup planning process. And if you remember, what we've really been talking about over the last few weeks is this process to really try to make planning for a startup much more concrete and much more tactical. Because, when you look at most planning processes out there, they're very strategic, right? And, within a startup, it's really more about narrowing and really trying to use the limited resources that we really have. So in this process so far, we've talked about really narrowing down and getting very isolated on the problem space that we're solving, and then narrowing our target market to one that we can go out and own with a really, a tight target of maybe 250 to 500 prospects total, and then starting to expand slowly to adjacent markets. And today, what we're really talking about is starting the exponential growth process, but even that in a very controlled way. And what we're talking about is really, this whole process is really about patience, right? And I'll give you a good example of this. As I built my last company, I talked last week about we're really focused on fast food, right? And selling an HR hiring solution into fast food. And the way that we were doing that, we sort of learned the lessons the hard way by having too broad of a focus, and then really narrowing that, getting serious about it, narrowing that down to fast food. But then again, we started to make the same mistakes again, right? And we said, okay, now we're getting a good foothold in this market. We're building case studies. We've got a good number of clients. So now what are we going to do? Well, we're going to start to expand way beyond that. And that was too much too soon. What we really needed to be doing was slowly removing the variables from the problem space in that narrow market. So what I mean by that was, instead of keeping it controlled, what we did was we just sort of dropped all of the variables again. And we said, essentially, now we're going to go sell to anybody hiring a lot of people, right? Which is basically right back to where we started again. But what we really needed to do was isolate down on the narrow area that we were focused before, which was high volume hiring for front of house in fast food. And the variables there's really kind of three there, right? High volume, front of house, fast food. Well, the fast food part we could start to drop, right? Because we didn't have to only be focused on fast food. But what we needed to do was maintain that same problem space of high volume hiring in customer facing, right? Now, customer facing in a fast food restaurant is the front of house. That's like counter help, things like that. So by going back to that core again, and then slowly starting to take out one variable at a time, in this case, we took out fast food. What that enabled us to do is say, okay, now what we're focused is high volume hiring, customer facing, and that started to bring other markets into play, like call centers, customer service, things like that. So again, we needed to be able to expand, but expand slowly and start that exponential growth process, but again, start it very slowly. The reason we were able to do that, and the reason that we ultimately became successful in doing that, is because the problem space was the same. The use cases and the case studies that we had built in the fast food market really, and then broadly in the restaurant market, really applied well to that, to those new spaces, because fundamentally, the problems of hiring and the problems of a poor customer experience were really the same. So that's what we're talking about today in the newsletter. Really hope you've enjoyed the last 4 weeks. This is the last segment in the deep startup planning process, and hopefully you found this helpful in terms of thinking about your go-to-market strategy and really how to build it in a way that you can grow, and you can grow quickly, but you're growing in a controlled and profitable way. And that's really what we're trying to do. So appreciate you joining us again this week. And if you're a new subscriber, welcome. If you haven't subscribed to the Founder's Journey podcast, where we have founders come on each week and tell their own stories, I hope you'll do that. It should be on the screen. Thanks, and have a great week.